think you have one. You're going to find out if you do tonight. Take iodine, take seaweed. Okay. All right, let's get started. Thyroid problems are probably one of the biggest that we're going to encounter in the medical profession. Out there in the wilds of Spring Hill and just about everywhere else. It's something that is becoming more and more prevalent. The incidence of has been going up, the prevalence of has been going up. The two are just different. Prevalence meaning that it continues on and on and on, and it just keeps on going. It doesn't seem to have an end in sight. Thyroid is a gland that is probably your most vulnerable gland, excluding your face and your eyes and general skin. It's the gland that's pretty much closest to the skin that has the most function in the body. So you have to excuse the door because it likes to do its own thing here and I can't control it. Nobody can. I've asked already, but they have some kind of regulation. It has to open, so don't worry about it. Anyhow, the thyroid gland is located in your neck. For those of you who don't know, or have no idea where this gland is, I've never seen it. And for some, it's baffling as to, how can anybody feel it? It seems like, it's not palpable. It's there. It's in the lower part of the neck. It's just underneath what we call the Adam's apple. Now, some of you may be able to feel this gland. It's not so easy, okay? Because it could be flat, it may be very flat, and undetectable by your fingers. Okay? If you're a professional, you should be able to figure it out. If you have something known as a goiter, an enlargement of the gland, it would be much more easily felt. And if you have little nodules or lumps on it, it can be very easily felt, especially by hands that know how to. I brought a little something to show you how big the gland actually is. Anyhow, this is the table of contents, and you can review that as we go along. This is a scale, just a cute little kitchen scale that I have, and I use my daughter's little clips. These are not hair clips, these are like paper clip type things. I'm going to pass this around. Okay. If I put this on the scale, it measures out.
From here, it goes a few.
But it measures out a ½ ounce. 1/2 ounce. Does anybody know what 1/2 ounce really is? You don't? Feel this. This is the same as this. One pink, one blue, boys and girls. Even this little car, ½ ounce. And this is not the shape of it, but it is almost like the shape of it. I chose these little things because the gland sits in the neck with a centerpiece and two wings, or alae. There's a right and left lobe. There's a middle isthmus, if you could say that word. Anyhow, so this kind of represents it in a very practical way. And the gland is a ½ ounce generally, normally. Now, if you are with a goiter, or if you've ever seen pictures of people in either this country or other countries with these very large necks, the gland can go upwards in the neighborhood of 10 ounces, 12 ounces, gets really big, okay? And depending on what else might be growing on that gland, it could be that it's nodular, that there are malignancies on the gland, there's tumor on the gland, and it can get very heavy, right? But we're at a stage in life, in this country anyway, in Western medicine, where we don't really encounter these types of things, especially in these parts. Somebody has a small growth on the gland. We detect it early, usually, unless the person is completely secluded, has no contact with the world. We're able to pick these things up early on and treat them early on. Okay. I'm gonna pass these little toys around. They might be a little sticky for my kids. I didn't wash them. But anyhow, you can feel what a half ounce is. Anyhow, the gland is, get them up. If I lose you, let me know if you can hear. The gland is what we call ductless. That is, the gland itself just secretes its production, its hormone, out right directly into the bloodstream. There's a very, very rich blood supply around the thyroid gland, and it goes directly into the bloodstream. Paul, I have a poster. There's a poster in the, on the table in the back, right where Diane is, and I want to show them that big poster. Anyhow, it is ductless. It has no little tubes or little pathways in which it secretes its production or its product. That is, the hormone that comes from the gland is secreted directly into the bloodstream. So it's a very, very quick exchange between the blood and the gland. We call that endocrine. So tonight you'll learn what these words mean. You've heard the word endocrine or endocrinologist, who is a specialist in these types of glands, plus more. But endocrine means it has no ducts. And what does that mean to us? Well, it means that things move back and forth pretty quickly, and things happen that don't necessarily need to take, that you don't need a lot of time for them to happen, and you can have instantaneous either sluggishness or hyper excitability or jitteriness in a flash. So having no ducts, this is a very quick way of getting messages back and forth. And there are a number of these ductless glands, and they include, I put them on your handout, they also include the pancreas. The pancreas is both an endocrine and an exocrine gland, but the endocrine part of it is the insulin that it secretes directly out into the bloodstream. So when you're eating sugar, you need a response right away to that sugar, and insulin is secreted in response to the sugar that is felt at the pancreatic site. Boom, insulin is secreted directly without any ducts. Now, an example of a gland that has a duct or a little tube would be your gallbladder, which has a little duct going in and out of it and into the pancreas and so on. So there's some duct system there. It's a different system.
Is the blood supply like the vein from the veins or arteries or what?
The arterial blood, there's arteries and veins. There's both. There's the whole concept is that there are both. So there's carriage into, out of, into, from, back, forth.
I guess.
Okay. As blood is passing through, I mean, arteries are just passing through in flashes, and veins are passing blood from in flashes. So it's moving in and out of the veins, the arterioles, all of the bloodstream. So it's a constant motion. I just thought you might like some nudity today, so I put on a picture of someone. Anyhow. Okay, now you have a general idea of where it is. Okay, this will show you. Okay, this lady here, you may or may not see. I can move this closer, of course, too. I'm sorry. She's naked. She's naked, yeah. Okay, so this is a very precarious position for the gland to be in, because it's vulnerable to just about anything that happens to you. I mean, if you have any kind of injury to the neck, if you even just internally swallowing, so on, all kinds of things can get can interact here, and it could be the thyroid, feeling the effects, or the effect of the thyroid onto this area. So there's something going on here. It's a vulnerable area. It's best to protect it as best you can. Okay, that means internally and externally. So the neck is a critical area. The passage of things through the neck, I can't begin to tell you the importance of. Okay, without your neck, there'd be nothing to connect the head to the rest of the body. But this is a vulnerable area. And what is it vulnerable to? Externally, radiation. Okay? Radiation will get through and through. Absolutely, just go right through you. But these glands are very sensitive to radiation or irradiation. So if you are radiated by X-rays, or you're receiving an X-ray therapy, radiation for cancer, for instance, or if you are exposed in a nuclear kind of situation, this gland is extremely vulnerable. It's vulnerable to injury, and there are many structures around it, very important structures, also the nerves that allow you to speak, phonate, that you can we can hear each other with. Those nerves are running in there, and very vital arteries and so on. So this is a very vulnerable area, and why the Grand Master decided to put the thyroid there, I don't know. I guess we ran out of spaces to put it. Anyhow, this structure has within it 4 little glands, about the size of rice grains. 4 rice grains. And they are very significant glands. They're called the parathyroid, and they have a different function from the thyroid gland itself. Right? So these 4 parathyroids, they control calcium movement in and out of the bones, for instance. And it's a very delicate balance. They try to keep your calcium level in a very narrow range so that you don't have too much or too little. Yeah.
The assume that they're as susceptible to damage from radiation as the thyroid itself.
Yes, the whole thing is susceptible. So, what happens when this is irradiated? Causes tremendous change in the cell structure of the thyroid, so that, or such that, the production of hormone is impaired tremendously. Okay? So you generally become, you can become hypothyroid. Now, when you are radiated therapeutically, for instance, like you have to ablate it because you have very active gland, it's gone out of control, you irradiate that, you kill it, you destroy it. No function anymore. You require replacement of your thyroid hormone by exogenous means, by outside means. You have to get it another way.
You can't repair.
Because not repeat, no, that's irreparable damage, absolutely. Okay, so just so that you have an idea, this is where your gland is. It's vulnerable, externally and internally. I'll get into that more. But it's near your windpipe. If there's damage to your windpipe, if you're hit, if there's blunt force here, you're going to get the effect not only to the airway. Damage to the thyroid is very possible on the parathyroids and all the other structures around it. Now this excludes, this is a very basic diagram, illustration of the thyroid and the trachea, but there's so much else in the neck. And the thyroid, because it looks like a shield, it was given the name thyroid, which comes from a Greek word, which I think I put here for you. Thyroides, and it means shield shape, so that's where you get your thyroid name from. Just interesting trivia that you may or may not be interested. I figure you'd be interested in. But what does this gland do? It does a heck of a lot. Okay, and from this poster, which you can come up and see later, it's not necessary to do now, but there are a number of things that, systems that it affects very strongly. Generally, it affects everything, because thyroxine, the hormone that is secreted by the gland out into the bloodstream, will be in every single cell of your body, and there are trillions of them. And it's there for these purposes. It's critical for your engine to run. If your thyroid doesn't work, your engine is not running well. Okay, and it could be subtle or it could be overt, extreme. It could be mild. So we have a spectrum of symptoms that can happen depending on what's going wrong in this gland. So it is very important for the development of your and my brain. One, we don't have enough thyroid hormone from our parents. The brain development can be impaired. Many of you, or some of you may have heard of some of the hypothyroid, the severe hypothyroidism that can happen congenitally around birth, and cretinism is the name given to those, or cretins, those called, who had these overt features of an underactive thyroid. And they're very sickly children, and they would die at birth or shortly thereafter because of the lack of thyroid hormone or extreme deficiency of it, because mother or father or both didn't have much of the thyroid hormone in their systems for whatever reason. Now, everybody's asking about this metabolism. What does it mean? Basically, the utilization of your energy from food to produce your proteins in your body that lay down the structures that we call organ systems. Basically, the assimilation of the food to building of the body and expending energy has to do with this hormone that we call thyroid hormone. The gland secretes this constantly for the purpose of keeping your metabolism going, the energy exchange from outside world to inside world, the production of chemicals, the production of organ systems, and giving you your brain power, giving you your speech power, your muscle power, everything. Everything is dependent really on this gland. So it's that critical, right, that you have this gland working the right way. It makes proteins, and it produces the calcitonin in a part of the gland that we call the C cells. Calcitonin, again, working with the parathyroids that are in the parathyroids that are embedded into the gland. The calcitonin and parathormone, which is the hormone that comes from the parathyroid, they regulate calcium. They kind of balance it. Okay. I don't want to get into too much biochemistry because it'll get too complicated and you won't understand, and I'm really not here to teach you about biochemistry. Anyhow, there's an amazing feedback mechanism. Do you all know what feedback is? I mean, you've heard, give me feedback, talk to me, right? When your pituitary gland starts the process, well, we think it's starting the process, the pituitary gland in the brain, it sends out a thyroid releasing hormone that stimulates the thyroid gland to release its hormone. So the pituitary gland stimulates the thyroid gland, and then the thyroid gland is stimulated by TSH, and that stimulates the production of thyroxine, which is the thyroid hormone. And when there is sufficient, there is a feedback to the pituitary gland, again, through the bloodstream, because this is all ductless, all this activity is ductless, going right into the bloodstream. The signals to the pituitary, we have enough hormone, let's not keep pumping out too much. So there's a balance that's going to go on. total feedback mechanism. When there's too much, there's a slowing down. When there's too little, there's a speeding up. It's pretty much all physics. It's chemistry, it's physics, it's math, it's everything you've learned in school. So it all was taught for a reason. Anyhow, this whole thing goes on, and it's going on constantly. The hypothalamus is another part of this, I'm sorry. Anyhow, so there's a pituitary hypothalamus thyroid interaction. The hypothalamus is another part of the brain, pituitary, and thyroid. It's all interactive. You don't have to worry about all that. I'm just giving you an idea of what goes on. The T3 and T4 are two forms of thyroid hormone. And these are levels that you will ask for. You go to your doctor, say, can I have my T3 and 4 levels done? And the doctor will say, no, probably. TSH is basically what you get. That's it. TSH will not really tell us the whole story. It may tell us something, but it may, at the same time, tell us nothing. Because I have had normal thyroid stimulating hormone levels that were present in people who were severely hypothyroid. So, is this a very good test to order? Not really, but it's what has been decided upon by the powers that be, who make the decisions, the researchers, the scientists, those who put it all together and figure, okay, this will probably be the best way to do it. How do we measure how well the thyroid is functioning? We try to check these TSH levels. The levels, again, can be very misleading. So we do the TSH and we do the T3 and 4s. At least in my practice, I try to do that so I can get a complete picture, and I'll explain to you what those all mean. T4 is the lesser of the active hormone. T3 is the more active form. So what do we want to do? We want to convert the T4 into the T3. And that conversion requires important, very important nutrients, very important elements that we take in the diet. Iodine, it requires tyrosine, and if you have other things, again, in the picture, that's going to help. But iodine is extremely important, and a diet that has no iodine in it, or very low iodine, is not the diet that one wants to have for a functioning thyroid gland, for a functioning body. The cells will take up T4 and T3. Okay, there's a constant exchange between T4 and T3. If there's not a need for more T3, that the T4 will hold and not convert so easily. Again, these are processes that are going on constantly. The change from T4 to T3 requires a removal of a molecule of iodine. So there's iodine that's needed for the production of the hormone, and then to activate the hormone, there's actually a deiodination. So there is a removal of iodine. That uncoupling process, why it happens, I don't know for sure. There's a lot of things I can't tell you. I can just tell you that these things do happen though. Anyhow, so we have this process. It's complicated, and I don't want to get too complicated with you, but I want you to get the idea that there's this conversion, and if you lack the conversion, if you can't convert T4 to T3 for some reason, there you could be in a hypothyroid state, okay? Because your body will not have that activated form, and it's not going to be working and humming along as nicely as it should. So things will slow down. The symptoms, all right. You get that for you. Symptoms I'm going to get to. Okay, just hold that thought for a moment. So the iodine that you need in your diet is found in various foods. Fish is a big one. Seaweed will also be found in eggs. It can be found in milk, but iodine in the soil is very iffy these days. We don't know what the soil content is for the most part, unless you yourself know your soil, check your soil content. We can't trust things anymore. We can't trust the agricultural department anymore for its nutrient, the nutrient content of the soil. Anyhow, if you are not taking in good amount of fish, or as I said before, seaweed, you don't eat eggs, if you're vegan, and you don't eat dairy products, you probably want to check into an iodine level, or take in more iodine through a supplement form, which you can get. A health food store will provide you with supplement forms. Table salt is not sufficient. Many people say, well, I eat salt, wouldn't that be enough? It's not enough. And research has shown that we don't absorb enough iodine from the salt that you get from one of these containers. So it's really pathetic. You know, you think you're adding in salt, you're doing yourself a favor. Well, you may be getting some, but you're not going to be getting a whole lot. And if you decide that you're not using salt anymore, because how many people have been told, don't eat salt, lower your salt intake, so without adding anything, and when you eat out or you go and buy foods that are packaged or processed, they do not have iodine in them. So don't think you're getting your iodine in the salt that comes in these packaged foods or out in the restaurant. They are not to put iodine in the salt. Are you all aware of that? They are not to do it, okay, it's by regulation. Okay, there's big iodophobia that came about many a year ago. And iodine used to be in bread, it is no longer. Okay, iodine addition to the bread flour was helping people. Now we have bromine in place of iodine, another halogen, which, you know, does something to the bread to keep it nice and its consistency and so forth, but it's harming us because bromine will displace iodine and throw off the whole mechanism that we have in our thyroid function. We need iodine for that thyroid hormone to be made. And when you're lacking it, or bromine is displacing it, or fluoride is displacing it, then we have a serious problem. So you can, just by listening to this, you might be saying, wow, most of us may be deficient, or most of us may be having faulty thyroids. In fact, that's the case. It is true. And there is a severe underestimation at this point of thyroid underfunction or hypofunction. Numbers that roll around right now are about 25 million people affected. How about more like 100 million people? Because we are seriously in a deficit of iodine, an excess of bromine and fluoride, and they want to continue to push the fluoride situation, as you all know. So what's the problem here? Sorry, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had one.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be better to take sea salt instead of halite or something? I mean, the salt they give you is really no good.
Right, it isn't good.
Sea salt is what you need to take anyway.
Sea
natural,
salt, yes.
not
There's a
refined.
lot of controversy even with sea salt. Make sure that the sea salt that you get, I'm not saying don't take sea salt, make sure it's a good quality.
It's not refined.
It's not refined, right? You want, you know, that which is not bleached, is not looking like powder, is, you know, has a crystalline formation. The pink salt, Himalayan salt is a nice one, Celtic salt, things that are not white. If you're eating white salt, sorry, it's not gonna work. But do try to get the better salt, absolutely. Sorry.
A number of states don't have fluoride in their water, so they're giving children oral fluoride to take for their teeth. So
Yes.
how concerned should parents be if they're in that state?
Yeah, the amount of fluoride that's given to children, in those circumstances, if it's not in the water, is less of a concern. If it's in the water and they're constantly using this, it's a problem. So, you know, when you have both going on at the same time, it's a problem. But they generally get, they get only so much. It's not a huge amount of fluoride from the dentist. And so not to get overly excited and having anxiety about that. It's you know, when the water is fluoridated and there's fluoride in other things, and a lot of these toothpaste that people are using all the time, you know, then there's a lot of exposure, and then there's, you know, there are other products too, outside of dental products that will have fluoride. Yes.
It's always confusing me because we watch them refining salt and it all comes from the sea, and that's what's confusing to me, is they say sea salt, it's all comes from the sea.
No, it doesn't all come from the sea, I think.
Well, I mean, except the Himalayan that we use, but
Yeah,
what
but-
we use is like river salt.
Morton salt, things like that, you're going to have, you know, factory made, you know, this is factory made chemicals. This is not a salt that has been taken from the ocean. The ocean hasn't been vacuumed and combed for its salt. That's a whole different story. Okay, moving on. Okay, so you have iodine, you have tyrosine. Iodine is essential. You can't make iodine from other things in your body. You can make some things in your body, however, through the combinations of different amino acids and so on. Okay, you make proteins from amino acids, but iodine you cannot make. You have to get it from an external source. So make sure this external source is a good one. Right? Tyrosine is found in these products: poultry, peanuts, soy, pumpkin seeds, avocado, bananas, and that, you know, you would want to include some of them in your diet. At least maybe you're not happy with eating peanuts or you don't eat soy. That's fine, but look at the food products that contain the tyrosine. Good for the thyroid. Okay. All right, moving on, and I'll get to the symptoms, I promise. Because that's a big one. Okay, so we have the problem starting early in life, or as the years are going on, things will start, keep building. You may say, I don't like fish. I don't eat fish. I don't want seaweed. I don't put salt in my food. This problem's already starting. Okay, so as a kid, you don't like this, you don't like that. Things are building up. Okay. So you start early, and it can be a problem. Now you can have the opposite. You can be taking in too much. If you take in too much iodine, which is not a typical thing, but it can happen, then you can have either a gland that becomes extremely overactive, or you can on the other hand, you can even shut the gland down. So the thyroid doesn't want too little, it doesn't want too much. It can't function on too little very well. It doesn't want too much, because in that case, it's not going to function well either. One of the biggest causes for thyroid disease is an autoimmune process. And this word goes around and round and round. A lot of people don't understand what this means. What is autoimmune disease? The body's attacking itself. Yeah. I got attacked myself. Did you see the movie Liar, Liar? Anyhow, he beats himself up. But MS is considered an autoimmune disease. It's now in that classification. Okay, what's happening? There is a self-attack. Okay, the immune system is attacking the body in a certain way. And depending on which antibodies we're talking about, if it's a thyroid antibody, or is it an adrenal antibody, is it a pancreatic antibody, there are different things that, different subtypes of antibodies we have. But you can have different autoimmune diseases all at once. So we can associate a lot of things with other things. So you can have an autoimmune thyroid problem and have diabetes and have rheumatoid arthritis, all these things that all have the involvement of the autoimmune process. Auto meaning self, immune meaning the attack or the defense system, which becomes the self-defense system becomes a self-attack system. So, the autoimmune self-defense antibody attack. The antibody is attacking, so you have your own immune system attacking your own tissue. You understand what I just said? Okay. All right, so it's a very complicated thing. I can't explain it very easily, but the process happens in different tissues, at different levels. The thyroid itself has receptors, the gland and other organs have receptors, and there are receptors for thyroid on the different tissues, and if that antibody sees that thyroid tissue or thyroid hormone or so forth, there's an attack upon it. So then there is a reduction in its function, so it cannot do what it's supposed to do in the cell. If I had a full diagram of, a kind of a simulated diagram or video, and it can show you what these processes are, you have an even clearer understanding. But imagine these little things on these little cells can't get in, can't do their job because there's something blocking, there's something attacking. So it's holding back the function, it's clamping down, and the function cannot go on the way it's supposed to. It becomes a faulty function, so that there's something that will happen, because not every receptor is going to be attacked, but a good number will be, and then you can have a reduced function, considerably reduced function. The body continues on because it has its mechanisms that come into play to try to make it all better. And that's a lot of stress on the system. That's where the other endocrine glands come into play, like the adrenal. The adrenals come in and try to come into the picture, and you have an interaction here going on. You stress the adrenal glands, the thyroid's being attacked, the adrenals are trying to come through its assistance, the pituitary is going crazy. So they're all, trying to help each other as this attack is going on. Somebody have a question? No. Okay, so you can have these autoimmune antibodies coming through from mommy, daddy, or it can be an acquired problem. Okay, as you go along, develop these antibodies. And the question is how? Remains elusive. We're still trying to figure it out. The pituitary gland, if it has anything wrong with it, again, there are many different conditions of the pituitary, which we call the master gland in the brain. It secretes all these hormones that regulate other hormones. It's an amazing little gland, and if it has anything wrong with it, it's really tiny. It's about the size of an almond, about that size. It has a huge role in the body. So it works to get that thyroid going, and if it has anything wrong with it, it can affect your thyroid gland, absolutely. Tumors, cancers, things like that. I don't know if any of you know of people who have used growth hormone, or maybe growth hormone was used on you because you had short stature, but that growth hormone can have an effect on the thyroid gland, causing reduced function. So a person who's had growth hormone at a young age can develop hypothyroidism early on, and may never know it early on, but we'll find out later on as the body just deteriorates more and more. Chemicalized food and drink, I can't say enough about that. You are exposed to a sea of chemicals every day. And I say food and drink here, but your skin drinks, creams, lotions, your mouth uses different things, your hair, your scalp, okay, your scalp skin. So you're drinking and eating through your skin, through your mouth, you're inhaling things. So all these things can affect you. Chlorinated water, yes, yes. All these things can affect the function of this gland. So, you say to yourself, how am I alive? How do I survive this madness? There's an attack going on from every direction. Whether it's an internal autoantibody attack or I'm being attacked by my environment. What is going on here? How do we survive? The body is amazing in that it does, but it gets beaten up. It gets beaten up. And so we have to try to figure out how not to be affected so much. How can we better it? Make it less vulnerable, defend it. Okay, so as I said before, you can be exposed to radiation, and that will cause a major disruption in the biochemical pathways that go on to create the thyroid hormone and to allow the thyroid hormone to be received by the tissue. So it's a big problem, exposures. People who have been, for instance, in bombings, the atomic bomb victims and so forth, tremendous problems, injuries to the thyroid. The people were not destroyed altogether outright. They developed cancers of the thyroid and everywhere else, but cancer of the thyroid is a biggie, big problem. And if you are exposed to a nuclear fallout and you have a radiation exposure like that, does anybody know the treatment? Iodine. Iodine. Okay. Iodine to saturate all the receptors and get the other things out of the receptors, because again the radiation just kind of infiltrates. Iodine will displace it. So if you can, if you're in a situation, iodine is part of the emergency care.
Isn't it a certain kind of iodine? I mean, it seems like lipids, something,
Yeah, it's got a certain atomic number and all that, but it's given and it's all kind of standardized. I don't know. It's not like you can just take a little small pill, but if you are in this situation right now, we have nuclear reactors going on in Japan, right? Okay, we've detected it over here on the East Coast now. Okay, it's been detected in the soil. Okay, so there's been the fallout. We have it here, so even more of a reason for you to take iodine if you're in a position to, or if you can take it. Some people cannot because of sensitivities, or you have if you have an autoimmune problem, it's not advised. But if you do not, if you're not in that situation and know what your situation is with your thyroid, so you can take iodine. It would be important to you to supplement it any way you can. Yes?
What about transplants or massive transfusions of blood? That's the rejection, the body starts rejecting that kind of stuff. What you're talking about, it sounds like, it's the same thing. They treat you with steroids. Does that mess up the endocrine system?
It sure does. Yes.
Well, how do you treat it then?
Well, you're talking about if you have had a transplant, and
Yes.
how do you prevent the rejection?
Right, usually they give you steroids.
Well, there's not a whole lot you can do alternatively in terms of transplant. You don't generally have a natural means to prevent the rejection. So the steroids in this case are like an absolute. They need to be given. And if there is an effect on the thyroid gland, the gland at the same time can be treated. If you have an underactive thyroid to begin with, it needs to continue the treatment. If it subsequently develops, you need to treat it.
Okay.
So you can use the steroids. If you have a corticosteroid on board, you can put that thyroid on board, because you got to protect the gland.
Same thing for blood transfusions. If you get 2 or 3 a month, you build up antibodies and all that stuff. It's the same kind of thing.
Blood transfusions, that's why sir, the blood transfusions, in order to have a blood transfusion, first of all, you have to be an acceptable recipient.
Right.
You cannot take any blood, otherwise you're going to reject the blood. So we have to have matching, we have to have cross-matching. you know, because there are antibodies that can immediately develop and have a major rejection, transfusion reactions and all that. That's a disaster. We've pretty much prevented that through screening of the blood and through matching properly. You know, so that's not a big problem.
Other than if you need it like once a week, then it builds up extra antibodies, and then you gotta retest you all the time.
If you need blood once a week, yeah, that's a heck of a lot of blood to be
That is
taken
a lot,
once a
right,
week.
if you got a certain condition.
Yeah, and they have to do that which is necessary. Usually it's the steroid that is given, and there are other blocking agents that are given so that there isn't a massive reaction. You know, that has to be done. Yes, Priscilla?
Dental exams.
Dental exams.
Now, if they won't examine your teeth unless they give you like 18 x-rays I just had this week. And I hated having that done, but they would not examine you without that.
Yeah, if you're talking about, she's talking about dental x-rays, yeah, I mean, you can completely decline the x-ray, and say, no, thank you, and walk out. But if you find that you're going to a dentist, any dentist, there are dentists that are more patient-friendly and thyroid friendly and all that, and they use either less X-ray pictures, or work with different systems. But in these circumstances, most people are going to have an X-ray. My advice again is to use iodine to make sure you're protected. If you can't take the iodine, you're going to have to use as much natural sources as possible, and limit the exposure. Tell them, I do not want all these x-rays done. You're just going to have to limit the exposure and make sure that you're shielded as much as possible. So you got to protect yourself inside and outside, and defend it. If you can't take the x-rays, then don't. If you in your heart think, look, I don't need this, I don't have a problem, and I don't want it, okay? That's up to you. But you do your very best. Yes.
I'm just trying to figure out something. I'm allergic to, when they give you the iodine for the
Dye.
and I'm allergic to bananas. Now, is there a correlation between the two? I get violently ill when I eat bananas.
No.
No,
No.
because the bananas have iodine.
Bananas are they're not really iodinated products. They have tyrosine.
Yeah, that's, not the iodine.
No, a banana is not a big source of iodine. I mean, if it's grown in an iodized soil, it'll have very trace amounts.
And the beta-blockers.
And, just one moment, and natural iodine, you're not allergic to natural iodine. It's these contrast things.
Oh, okay.
And some people are allergic to shellfish and all that other stuff. Well, there's a lot of components here, and it's not only the iodine, there are other allergens in there, so it's a complicated situation there. But natural from the soil, there's no allergy to iodine, it's an essential nutrient.
The beta-blockers, is that, those are what they give you for
Yes.
blood pressure?
Yes.
What are some of the beta-blockers that?
Beta blockers are propranolol or Inderal, metoprolol or Toprol, atenolol, things like that. Bistolic. Okay.
So
So-
beta-blockers are iodine?
They can block that whole process. Yes, they can slow down that process that's going on in the gland. The formation of the hormone, the sensitivity to the hormone. So this is something you gotta be aware of. Beta blockers, if you're on beta blockers and you have a hypothyroid situation, it's, if it has to be that you're on the beta blocker, that thyroid needs to be defended as much as possible. It's the way it is.
I use a neck guard when I've had dental x-rays.
Right.
Will that protect the thyroid?
Not entirely.
No.
It's just scatter, okay? When they click the button, radiation is all over the place. It scatters, so it's definitely not perfect. It is protective and it will reduce the exposure, but it's not perfect. All right, surgery, if you remove part of the gland, you may not need to have replacement. Some people have part of the gland removed because it was pressing on the trachea, they couldn't breathe, or there's something else there, a cancer. You don't necessarily need replacement for the thyroid. But if most of the thyroid is taken out, or all of it, either subtotal or total thyroidectomy, you need replacement. These drugs also, amiodarone, lithium, estrogen in the synthetic form, like birth control pills, Premarin, S-trace, things like that, they can all affect the thyroid function. So be aware of that if you're on any replacement. Bioidenticals would have a lesser effect on this because they are more natural, they're closer to your own physiology. So if you're taking a bioidentical, it comes from a plant and it's very close to your own physiologic hormones. So that would be recommended by me anyway. If you're chronically ill, if you have any kind of illness, whether it's long-standing neuromuscular disease, or you have heart disease or lung disease, any of these things can impact and stress the thyroid. Heavy metal toxicity, that includes mercury, lead, zinc. People be using, what do you call that stuff? That paste that helps hold your dentures in place. There was something going on with that, with the zinc. I don't know, what's it called, polygrip?
Yeah.
Something or other that was creating problems. A man in this practice, was an unbelievable finding. He realized that he was intoxicated by the zinc in that product. And he was on oxygen as a result of it. He couldn't breathe. I didn't know that the man was using this stuff. I really didn't know, and I wasn't aware of the problem. He brought it up to me. Wow, he didn't need a bit of oxygen anymore. He's breathing much better, he's fine. He stopped using the zinc. He had high zinc levels. He chelated, he's almost 100% better. But something like this, if you're not aware of what you're taking in, or what products you're using, how they can harm you. I mean, a denture grip? Yes. So if you have this, or you have metals in your mouth, and you have amalgams, you definitely have mercury exposure. Because the dentist won't tell you, but you have mercury exposure. They amalgamated mercury way back when. They were not supposed to use it. They brought it back in, they snuck it back into dentistry, and it's been used ever since. And until we stop it entirely, we don't, unless everybody puts the brakes on it and says, we're not doing this anymore, it will continue to be used. So now you have a choice. You take it out, you chelate your body, get it all out of your system. If you can't because it's expensive, your insurance company will probably refuse to pay for any of that, you do your best to strengthen your system. Chelating while you have the mercury in might not be a good idea. So try to get it out. If you have 2, get them out. If you have 10, get them out slowly but surely, and chelate. Chelate means using an agent that will attach to the mercury, which lands in a lot of tissue, can cause neurotoxicity, nervous system that is, can lead to Parkinson's syndrome, can lead to MS-like symptoms, fibromyalgia, you name it. Going back to the autoimmune kind of situation, yes, you can have a lot of the symptoms from mercury. So one of our biggest sources is our mouths. Your dentist is not going to remind you of that. And your fish, of course, is another source of mercury. So, you gotta be careful. You just gotta know these things and make your choices. Yes.
It's very important to be sure that you go with the dentist that knows what they're doing with regards to that, because
Absolutely.
way back when I had mine taken out, and that dentist didn't know a thing about it.
Absolutely.
So I've done a lot of mercury
Right, so if you do wanna have the mercury out of your mouth, go to a dentist who knows how to do it, okay? It's not just plunk and out, it's done. It has to be done with a damming, they put this little thing over the tooth, they have to suction it out, it has to go into a specific container, and they may use a little oxygen just to oxygenate you to make sure that you don't get any vapor gas. Because once that mercury comes up, it can give off vapor, which is toxic. Okay, so just be aware of these things. Malnutrition, if you don't eat right, you don't feed the thyroid, you're gonna be in trouble too. So there's a lot of nutrition involved with taking care of the thyroid gland. And taking care of the thyroid gland means taking care of the whole body. All right, let's talk about hypothyroidism. How many here have been told they're hypothyroid? Okay, so a good number of you then. Diabetes is, right now off the scales. Everybody's got diabetes? Hypothyroidism is coming right after it. I can see it now. Okay, these are the statistics, 27 million people. That's, as far as I'm concerned, a pretty gross underestimation. But we work with statistics, we work with numbers, people collect numbers and so forth. What's reported is reported in the whole data bank for that they have, and then they'll put these numbers out and publish them. But there are too many people who have this condition, and I would say that there's probably upwards in the neighborhood of 100 million people, like almost 1/3 of our population, if not more. So there's a slow or even a sudden change in the function of this gland, and it affects, ladies, unfortunately, us more than it does the guys. Why? We still don't know. It's a little mysterious. The estrogen connection doesn't seem to be there because it's there before and after menopause. It can happen after menopause, it can happen before menopause. So that's not it. Is there something else on the X chromosome? Probably. Okay, so there's still research going on. We don't have the full answers. But yes, it affects women, and autoimmune diseases in general affect women more than men. So you'll see more women with Hashimoto's thyroiditis, or Graves' disease, or rheumatoid arthritis, or multiple sclerosis, or fibromyalgia. These are some of the things that are classified as autoimmune diseases.
Could there be ovaries? Could the ovaries affect you because of that? Men don't have ovaries, could that be?
Ovaries, well, ovaries are that which produce estrogen. So it's looked at as one of possibly a substance or the culprit, but it probably isn't. So what else is in the ovaries? There are other things in the ovaries too. So we're not sure yet. And the symptoms and the signs. Now, this young lady was asking me. The symptoms and the signs of a symptom is something you feel, a sign is something that we can measure, right? So people want to know the difference. Signs also are those things which we have hanging on the walls. But a sign is something that we can measure, like you can measure your body temperature, right? You don't have a symptom of a body temperature, we can measure it, right? And I'll get back to the body temperature too. But these kind of things, if you have 4 or more of these things, generally, all the time, every day, you've got something wrong with your thyroid gland. It's not that it's going to be life-threatening, but it's going to make your life uncomfortable. You're going to be any one of these on the list. And this is not all-inclusive. There are a few others too. But if you measure your body temperature under the arm for 1 to 2 minutes every morning before you get out of bed, and it says 97.8 or less, you're hypothyroid probably. if it says 98.2 or higher consistently, and usually 99, so you may be hyperthyroid. But
What is hyper?
that's not an absolute, okay? If your body temperature under the arm, the axilla, is consistently 97 or lower, you have something going on with the thyroid gland. So low body temperature will then manifest as cold, feeling cold. If you feel chilled, like today, right now, if you don't feel right in this room, again, I don't feel right either. Freezing, well, if the air is on, we can turn it off and you can all just be hot in here, which is, it's up to you. I don't care anyway. All right, so you can get up and move around and shake and shimmy.
What is mentation?
What is mentation?
Never heard that.
Did I put that down?
Number 2.
Slower.
I don't see meditation.
Second page.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Yeah, you are the young lady. Okay, meditation is the process of thinking, your mental processes. Right, the word mentate, sorry, yeah, see, you learned a new word today. Okay, so, these are probably the most common things we see, okay? If your voice sounds like this, or you're feeling, or it's cracky, or you sound like, you just got up and you sound like that all day long, that's not normal, right? I spoke with a woman recently, and I said, do you know that your voice is a little raspy? No. So, did you notice that your eyes are a little puffy? Okay, this woman has no idea what's going on. I see all these features on her that I'm so used to, being able to pick up. I see you draw your eyebrows in. Okay, if you have to draw your eyebrows in and are on, and it's not like that they just fell out because some bird picked them out or they decided to fall out. No. If you have been on chemotherapy, that's another story. But if your eyebrows are falling out, and that is the hairs are falling out, the outer 1/3, that's another little sign that you may have a hypothyroid problem. There's a lot of little things that we can pick up. Swollen or puffy eyes. Now again, people will say, I must have eaten too much salt last night. Maybe you did, but if your eyes especially underneath, are regularly puffed out, it's another sign. We can see and measure. It's not that you feel it. You say, oh, I have these puffy eyes. That's a sign. So, fatigue is something you feel. That's a symptom. Infertility, that's something we can measure. It's not a symptom. We see that you can't have a child for some reason. That's infertility. That's more of a sign. So, if you couldn't have children, or somebody who cannot have children, hypothyroidism can be the problem. Okay, it's overlooked. It's undiagnosed. That's the biggest issue here. You can have normal function ovaries. Your man can be great. His sperm are super sperm. And you have perfect ovaries. Why can't you get pregnant? Not because you're in a bad mood, but your thyroid may not be working. Yes, ma'am.
Suppose you have none of these symptoms, but your TSH is high, but nothing,
That is possible. That is absolutely
what
possible.
did you say?
You can have a high TSH without these symptoms. Yep. That is possible. It's not the usual, but it's very possible, and we have to address it also. Okay, you don't just leave, the thyroid, the TSH is up, so that means there's something else in the picture. So we have to be mindful of it, and we don't ignore it. I have a person who has a total cholesterol of 60. Total cholesterol, 60.
Wow.
I can't ignore that. But, people generally are trying to get their cholesterol under 200. This person has a cholesterol of 60, is on nothing for it. Nothing to drop it, it's naturally 60. How often do you see that? Okay, it's something I can't ignore, so the person has other problems, but that is quite unusual. So we do see things like that when the TSH is up, you don't have these symptoms.
So that would come from the very low cholesterol would come from the thyroid?
She has a thyroid issue, yes. So, but it's, it's questionable, because usually thyroid will give a high cholesterol. That's another sign, but again, I put it there. High cholesterol, high blood pressure. Now, Hashimoto's is also called lymphocytic thyroiditis. This is one of the most common conditions that I have found, and that is. And a little Japanese man is the one who kind of founded it. He was the one who identified this condition, and so it was named after Dr. Hashimoto. Again, we're not sure how this thing is going on, but antibodies to the thyroid form. Okay, and there's an attack on the gland. What happens initially when the whole process actually starts, as the thyroid gland is developing and a person's getting older, it swells, and you can start with hyperthyroid symptoms, which I'll show you in another slide, which would be the opposite of the hypo. Hyper, when you think hyper, you mean, we mean like kind of revved up and everything. You start having these revved up symptoms. You can sweat profusely, lose tremendous amount of weight. The thoughts racing all over the place. Heart is pounding in your chest. And that can go. And it can go shortly, or it can take a while to go away. If it's not recognized, or if it's passed off as no, whatever, I'm losing weight, I feel great, I'm losing weight. Some people do that. Wow, I'm losing weight, I feel great. But I'm also jittery, and my heart is racing. Usually that's picked up by one of us, and we have to treat. But that can be short-lived, and then you can turn around and become hypothyroid. And that's usually what happens, a person becomes hypothyroid. You may not have that hyperthyroid episode at all. You may just become hypothyroid. It kind of sneaks up on you, and you just start feeling terrible. Everything's just not working right. So what happens is there's a white blood cell, a form of white blood cell that infiltrates this tissue. And they accumulate in the gland. The gland can get large. And there is this whole, it's like an attack system. The lymphocytes are attacking the gland. Okay, so it brings me right into the symptoms of hyperthyroidism. Anybody here hyperthyroid or has ever been? Now you can have both. People have asked me this, can I be both hyper and hypo? Yes. Because of this kind of scenario. You can have the Hashimoto's, which can flip back and forth. Okay. Usually it's the hypo, in general, the hypo state. The sluggish state, you feel horrible. But you can have those episodic palpitations. Or if you're taking too much medicine, if it's giving you too much hormone, the thyroid replacement, it may put you into a hyperthyroid state. So there's different things that can go on. The gland itself can go awry, or we can iatrogenically, that is, induce the hyperthyroid state if we give you too much medicine. So if you have these symptoms, the weight loss is not something that, like 1 pound a week or 1 pound a month. No, you lose 5 pounds in 2 days and keep going. So don't get any ideas though. Don't start taking extra thyroid, which people do. People will do this. They have done it, and they try to do it. They'll ask for thyroid medicines. They'll try to steal them. They'll use mom's thyroid medicine. Somebody's teenagers taking their mom's stuff. They know. Yeah.
I'm familiar with the hyperthyroid, lose the weight fast, but also it can come back fast too. What causes that?
You can gain that fast.
Yeah.
Oh yes, absolutely. Well, what causes it is, again, it's all faulty. It's a faulty regulation system, and once we get it off, if you get it off, first of all, if you're sluggish and tired, which is what happens usually, you have this hyper state, but you can be so exhausted, and then things can turn around, and then when we give you the medication to turn it around, to block, for instance, the tapazole kind of thing, you take that medicine and then you slow down the thyroid gland, then you start going in the other direction. But there are many factors with gaining weight. If you are a smoker, you stop smoking, you can gain weight. You can gain weight because your dopamine receptors are no longer stimulated now. Now you go into a slower mode, so that can that'll throw off your thyroid gland too. So there are different factors that come into the gaining weight or the re-establishment of weight. So like I said, you first have a swollen gland, and then the gland can regress. It depends on how it's treated. So there's another condition that also involves antibodies, which creates the opposite. It creates a very hyper state, and it has to be taken care of, because if it's not, cardiovascular damage, glandular damage, brain, everything can be affected here, because you're really in a hyper state. It's almost like you're on speed. Amphetamines, you have to come out of this state. So as soon as it is detectable, it needs to be treated as soon as possible. There should be nothing else interfering with the process. If you smoke, if you take other medications that stimulate you, if you're taking caffeine products, things like that, they need to go, because they foul up the whole thing. So if you're hyperthyroid and overactive, you've got to be off of those things. So Dr. Graves in 1835, found this scenario where the gland created all of these symptoms, and as far as the symptoms are concerned, they are those of the hyper agitated kind of person, diarrhea, rapid heart rate, and another thing is eyes that will bulge. This is the difference between Hashi and Graves. One of the differences, you'll see people with very protrusive eyes. Okay, the lids cannot come down, and so they look like they're deer in headlights all the time, right? All right, so when you correct it, the eyes can come back down. And the reason for that, proptosis, or the eyes bulging forward, is there's an accumulation of mucopolysaccharides behind the eye. There's a lot of gunk that comes in and accumulates back there and pushes the eye forward. So it's all part of the antibody system, the antibody process, and all these mucopolysaccharides are laid down in tissues, particularly behind the eye.
So is that genetic? You can't get Graves unless you had Graves? Is it genetic? Graves is passed on?
Genetic it's very,
You
yeah,
can't get it
it's,
unless you had somebody gave it to you?
yeah, it's usually, some kind of family-driven or hereditary process that's going on. We don't know the exact mechanisms here, but it's usually seen that, somebody has Graves, and then gives birth, can have a baby who has Graves or Hashimoto's eventually. It can be any number of thyroid problems. There are other types of thyroid diseases too, besides those which I'm going over today. They're less often seen, but people who have family history of thyroid problems are likely to develop thyroid problems. Yeah. You can be manic, you can be depressed, and all this is, really can drive the person into a horrible state. You probably have seen people with goiters if you have not had one yourself. If you do have a goiter, it doesn't mean that you have Hashimoto's. It doesn't mean that you have Graves. You may have had. It all can be there. You generally don't have Graves and Hashimoto's. It's usually one or the other. I have never seen somebody who's diagnosed with both. You have one, you have the other. Or you may have neither, and you can have a goiter, a simple goiter, and this would be considered a simple goiter where the neck is just enlarged. The gland itself is hypertrophied in response to stress, different things over the years. It doesn't secrete anything extra. It may just be there and you feel fine. Your TSH may be fine, your T3, 4 may be fine, but eventually it's going to not be fine. Goiters invariably become hypothyroid people. Now, you can have a goiter with nodules on it or things growing on it, and they can be, the nodules themselves can be hyperfunctioning. Without the gland itself, the nodule can cause a hyperthyroidism. So you can have strange things going on here. You can have cysts on the gland which are inactive.
What's inside?
What's in there?
Is it white
It's
blood cells or
no,
liquid
no, it's not white blood cells, no.
or liquid?
The goiter itself is the thyroid gland material, colloid. We call it colloid. The gland is made up of this colloidal material, it just increases in size. So it's increasing in response to something, you know, it's wanted to make more hormone because the person.
It itself grew.
Yes. If you had an insufficient iodine intake, which is usually the case, okay? So you'll see people in countries where iodine is deficient, you can have people walking around with goiters. I think they were fashionable in some places.
We have a goiter belt, don't we, in our country?
Yes, we have a goiter belt. You know where that is?
In the Midwest.
Midwest, that's correct. Right,
Because they don't get
that is
the
correct.
ocean breeze or whatever.
That is correct, absolutely.
In the soil.
Yeah, so there is a doctor up there in Michigan, in the Midwest, his name is David Brownstein. And, this is on your list of references. You can always, look to this gentleman. He is very much into, the thyroid. He's done a lot of research, him and a team up there in Michigan. And, yes, because he's in the goiter belt, probably the reason, that he's really gotten involved with that, because he sees so much of it. There are people with this problem, and invariably, it's going to lead to a hypothyroid state. Right. Nodules, like I said, they can secrete, they may not be active, so usually what happens is you have something on the gland, I'll get an ultrasound, there's a nodule there may be several, you may have a multinodular goiter. An endocrinologist will generally say, okay, you gotta go for biopsy. I take it slowly with these things. If it's one solid or isolated nodule, I have to test it, I'll do another scan and check and see if it comes up as a cold nodule, then it may need to come out. That's something that we do. If I do the scan and there's no cold nodules, cold versus hot, if it's a hot nodule, it's okay. If it's cold, it may be cancer. So we have to decide whether it's to be biopsied or not, left alone. Some of these things can be totally left alone. A lot of people with multinodular goiters, we treat them, or I treat them, whether it's me or someone else treats, to try to make the goiters smaller, reduce the size of the nodules, and very successful. I've been pretty successful in a number of cases. Did you have a question?
With the parathyroid, the nodules,
Parathyroid, they have themselves, they have a capacity to grow. They may develop what we call adenoma, or an adenocarcinoma, which is very rare, which is a cancer of the parathyroid. But you can develop a large parathyroid which starts over-secreting, and then your calcium level goes way up, and that needs to be helped. You know, and usually conventional medicine will take the gland out.
but when they get there and the calcium levels are relatively normal,
If you take it out, or if
no,
you,
you just eat.
yeah, you can control, if you can control the calcium levels, generally you're okay. Yeah. And that we can do that, we do have ways of doing that. Any questions on this? Nodule, yes.
Uh,
And I do your TSH is normal, your T4, T3 normal, and then they do a thyroid panel, and that comes back real high out of range, like over 200. Biopsy would be called for then.
If you're talking about a thyroid globulin level, just the level itself, not an antibody? The thyroid globulin
Yes.
level. Yeah, if it's extremely high, then you want to do a biopsy. Yeah.
And if the biopsy comes back and needle biopsy fine, don't worry about anything after that.
It's generally not a problem. Just take care of your thyroid, do the right thing to keep your thyroid as small as it can be. Okay? You want to keep that thyroid tucked in, nice, neat, nice looking neck. And you can do it in different ways, and I'll tell you how. Okay, so we have to determine what's, is it benign, is it more than benign? Okay, thyroid resistance. If we keep giving you thyroid hormone and you're not doing a thing with it, no matter what, you're likely to be thyroid resistant. And a lot of people don't understand this and don't know this, but I have seen this where a person, for instance, with Hashimoto, will be given thyroid replacement and like desiccated or porcine thyroid, no matter how much this person needs more and more, and we have to push that TSH all the way down to have some response. It can be harrowing. It drives us nuts. But we have to do it in some cases. Endocrinologists do not like this. They'd rather just rip the gland out and say the heck with this. But you can, I just lost my train of thought now. What was I just saying? I'm going into mental.
Resistance.
Thyroid resistance, thank you. My brain. Okay, it's an overload right now. Thyroid resistance, if you have it, we have to really work at keeping the thyroid happy, and it really means multiple hormonal adjustments, more than one thing. So it's not easy in some cases to be able to get the right dosing and everything, but we gotta keep trying. So we have to do different things to balance it. And a lot of it has to do with food and how you live your life. Okay, as I said before, that there are many things associated with the thyroid gland, thyroid being abnormal. Person with fibromyalgia almost invariably has thyroid problems. Person with adrenal exhaustion, you can bet has thyroid problems. So, these things almost go hand in hand. Physical and mental abuse, torture, people who have been essentially tortured have been through tremendous stress. This will affect the thyroid. Cancer can affect the thyroid, and thyroid can create cancer too. So it's, both ways. Coronary disease, there's more and more evidence that underactive thyroid disease or underactive thyroid will contribute to this rise in coronary problems. The development of the plaque, the accelerated plaque development for a person who doesn't eat wrong and does her best, or he does his best. These people who make every effort and they still develop coronary disease. What's going on? The thyroid is probably not being controlled. And there is a doctor by the name of Rhoda Barnes, who some of you may have heard. Okay. He wrote this book, Hypothyroidism, the Unsuspected Illness. It's very good, it's very informative, and it's very understandable. All these that I've mentioned to you in the handout are easy to understand. They don't get, they may get into some chemistry and stuff like that, but they're easy to understand, and you can appreciate the vignettes, the stories that they talk about, the patients that they've worked on, things that have happened. But there's a lot of information in here about not only coronary disease, but skin diseases like psoriasis and eczema, acne vulgaris. Some people have acne their whole life. Why? Why do they have acne? hypothyroidism. Treat the thyroid appropriately and the acne can go away. I mean, it's just amazing how many things are associated with the thyroid gland. So, like I said in the beginning, the thyroid gland really does regulate everything.
I see, chronic fatigue.
Chronic fatigue, yep.
Well, like my daughter was diagnosed with chronic fatigue and they said there's no cure, but.
Right, it's always a dismal thing, you know, you tell you get chronic fatigue,
Yeah.
sorry, we can't do anything for you. Yeah, chronic fatigue is associated with a number of things. Epstein-Barr infection or exposure to the Epstein-Barr virus can be incorporated into a person, and boy oh boy, they can carry it through their lives. It's unfortunate, but it does happen. If you've had mononucleosis, anybody here know they had it? Okay, that, you carry that for the rest of your life, don't you? It doesn't leave you. It's not like it, you know, it's over, it went through that hell and it's over. No, it keeps on in your system and it keeps you tired and worn out. Again, it requires a lot of changes. Diet, exercise, avoidance of things, avoidance like crazy. You have to be alert to everything. It's like the person who has celiac disease has to avoid gluten like it was like a devil. You know, because the smallest amount will set them off. So if you have chronic fatigue and that Epstein-Barr is in your system, you've got to make changes. And when you do make the changes, that's when you'll see change. That's when you'll see your betterment. You've got to make the changes though. And again, we have different books. I've given you the references. These are some books to look into further. The fibromyalgia book, there's adrenal stress book. They all talk about chronic fatigue at one point or another. So this is something you can do something for. It's not perfect, but you can help yourself. And the thyroid may very well need help too. Yes, just one second.
In one of the previous lectures, you spoke about anxiety and depression.
Yes.
And how the thyroid interacted. In this presentation, I haven't heard anything in regard to that, so.
Okay, yeah, well, the thyroid, again, if you have an underactive thyroid, and you may find yourself, you know, again, having a mood disorder associated with it. If you have an overactive thyroid, you can have a mood disorder, you can have tremendous anxiety. You know, these things may be part of the syndrome, and improving, again, it's all improving the status of the glands, you know, that's the goal, where you'll see a lot of these other things improve and resolve, hopefully.
So these things should be checked out before you really take antidepressants that are
I would,
all
yeah,
the time.
exactly, because what is the conventional treatment, and again, it's in your handout. Conventional treatment, you know, they'll put you on antidepressants. You know, your TSH is okay. It's you know, you're depressed, you need an antidepressant, so that's usually the answer. But there are other ways of doing it, and I'll get to that, yes.
Those of us who take thyroid medicine,
Yep.
we've taken it for a while.
Yes.
Do we continue taking this, or do we get well, or do we get worse?
Generally, thyroid replacement becomes a lifelong process. It's like, you know, you have to take your vitamin pill every day. For most people, if they come off, Joe, they end up back on. You know, so whether it's the desiccated or the synthetic, you know, I find that people end up back on, who have come off. They say, oh, I was on that 10 years ago, and they're falling apart. They were off of it for 10 years. So some people do self-DC it, they discontinue it. And, or the doctor said, oh, well, your thyroid, your TSH is fine, you can come off. We've got to be really careful with that. You know, you don't just drop it, because it may mean the difference between you developing a heart attack or losing some brain cells or something, you know. So the thyroid hormone is vital. We need it, and we need it, and if it's just a little bit, and you're taking a little bit, it may be making a big difference to you. So don't just say, oh, well, I'll drop it, and I'll just eat more seaweed.
Would it help some of us if we increase the dosage?
Increasing the dosage, it really has to be dependent on you, your physiology, and if it's right. I have to see that everything is really in place. If it merits increase, then we do. Sometimes, yes. Yes?
Personally, I kind of became very ballsy, to say the word, and I stopped taking my thyroid medicine. And I went back to the doctor, and the doctor told me that I could have put myself into a coma. Is that possible?
In a coma, well, he may have just wanted to scare the hell out of you.
Well, that's why I wanted to double check to see, exactly, because, that really did. It opened my eyes. I've been dealing with my thyroid now for 20 years.
Wow.
My aunt and I were comparing symptoms.
Uh-huh.
And she would say, oh, I've got this. I said, well, I've got that. And she said, well, I've got this. I said, oh, I've got that. And I came back from a visit with her, and I went to the doctor immediately and said, I want my thyroid tested. And at first, it was the arguing, no, you don't need it. And I
Right.
said, no, she's now on thyroid medication. I want it tested.
Right. Good, you were persistent.
I was an advocate for it
Good.
because I knew something was not right.
Right.
But when I did stop the medication,
Uh-huh.
how bad can the side effects then get?
Well, you stop it and you don't know what you're doing, really. Once you stop it, unless you really know what's gonna happen, it can be devastating. Again, if you pull something off and you go about your business, you can do it for maybe a few months, and then you're gonna start running out of steam. Because if you do have an antibody, I don't know if you have an antibody problem or not, but it's gonna catch up with you. If you don't have an antibody problem, you may be able to go a certain distance, and then under stress, you may not be able to handle it. So I find that people who are hypothyroid, whatever the diagnosis is, whatever the underlying thing is, if it's an antibody or non-antibody, these people who are hit with stress of any sort then start to crash. Then the thyroid really goes down. Then you start to feel the symptoms, and they come on, and they come on ferociously. So you feel extreme fatigue, become very mentally, things don't work. You're gaining weight, everything just boom, one after another. Digestion is all fouled up.
Well, I was concerned that my TSA goes up, but the doctor automatically increases the Synthroid.
Right.
Is that the given thing you're supposed to do? Like, I'm on testosterone, which
Okay.
can be a problem too. But I increased it and I feel worse. She didn't do anything but TSH. You're supposed to do other tests, don't you?
Ask your physician to do the other testing.
Well, she's a generalist, you probably need to go to endocrinologist.
You're not looking at an endocrinologist.
Well, that's what I probably need to go to.
You have to, we can all do that. We can order these tests for you if you ask for it. I don't have a problem. If somebody said, please, can you check this for me? Yeah, as long as your insurance will pay for it, I'll check everything from here to the moon. But if you don't have the information, she doesn't have all the information, it's hard to determine. Because like I said, that TSH is not very specific.
Yeah, I
It's
know,
like the
giving out
PSA.
candy pills or something.
Right.
A lot of people are giving it out just to give it out because TSA's out.
Well, this is what's taught, this is what we're taught, in residency, we'll be trained, if the TSH goes up, just bring up the medicine. If the TSH is down, just bring down the medicine. And people don't understand that. When the TSH goes down, we have to back off of medicine. It's not that your thyroid is low functioning, it's too much, so we have to back off. I have a person, poor thing, she is suffering with Hashimoto's. I'm working as best I can with her, and I feel like endocrinologist. I feel like, oh my God, this is all I'm doing now with this person. And she has every symptom, and she has adrenal problems. She's got it all. She's got everything. And she said, thank you, because you're the only one who's been listening to me, and I've been trying to help her out, and I have to do it from different angles. It's very, very difficult, because she's sensitive to everything, and we have to be very careful with the way we titrate medicines. And she has to have that TSH low. And endocrinologists have pulled it up, they pulled the TSH up. They've dropped her medicine, and she almost died several times because they kept trying to take the medicine away when she needed it. So we've gotta be really careful, and it's, everybody's an individual here, and we've gotta be careful the way we do things. I can't, if her TSH is low, I can't back off the medicine, I have to leave it alone. But an endocrinologist will say, oh no, you have to back off. But her heart rate drops down to 30 if I take it off. You know, so thyroid is, again, it is vital, it is necessary for life. You can't play with it, you gotta know what you're doing with it. And if you have to have these questions answered with your physician, or the physician is not answering, I suggest you move on. You've got to be your own advocate. You can't just say, I don't know, he's telling me I gotta do this, or he's telling me I gotta do that, and I feel worse, I don't think I'm getting better. You need to find somebody who's going to be there, listening to you. And there are people out there who will listen. It's just, it's a matter of getting referrals and knowing who's going where, and you know what, this doctor does this and this doctor does that. It's the way it is. I wish it were different, I wish everybody were on the same page, but unfortunately not. Anyhow, so just to move on a little bit here, if you have hepatitis, or you know somebody has hepatitis, again, this is often associated with hypothyroidism, unfortunately. Again, it's a chronic thing. It hangs out in the system and it stresses the thyroid gland. So the thyroid has to keep trying to defend the body against these things. Your thyroid, again, is trying to help keep everything in balance, keep you in homeostasis, in balance. If you have a mycoplasma infection, a lot of people don't even know what this is. If you have these little things that can infect the system, sometimes it makes a difference to treat them. If you had tuberculosis, syphilis, you strain and stress the thyroid. So a lot of people are not aware of that. Conventional treatment, if the doctor sees your TSH is up and you're feeling lousy, it's time for replacement. So usually they use a synthetic Synthroid, levothyroxine, Levoxyl, things like that. That's the T4. T3 is the Cytomel. Then you have the combination synthetic Thyrolair, which has T4 and T3 in it. They have nothing else but just either T4, T3, or T4, T3 combined. The desiccated is a whole different story. That is, the glandular one is different. So when you're talking synthetic, it's one or it's two only. And so if the gland is very big, if it's pressing on the trachea, if it's causing swallowing problems, if the person is extremely uncomfortable, there may be some surgical removal. That does happen. If there's cancer, it's removed. Antidepressants, as I said before, stimulants, laxatives, that's because a physician is trying to treat the symptoms, everything that happens as a result of, okay, he's constipated, needs to lose weight, here's a diet pill. He's depressed, here's an antidepressant, okay? So this is typical conventional stuff. There are other ways. Hypothyroidism, again, conventional. Radioactive ablation, they actually ablate it with radiation. Boom, knock it out. Means, I'm teaching you a lot of words today. Ablation means we knock it out. You ablate it, you just put it into non-existence. You void it. And antithyroid drugs, for instance, methimazole or tapazole is typically used. PTU, propylthiouracil, is another one that's used in women who are pregnant. In particular, because if you have a pregnancy, you've got to be careful with some of these that are very toxic. You won't use radiation, you won't use methimazole, you may need to use PTU because the person is extremely hypothyroid. It can be devastating and dangerous to the baby, to the fetus. Surgical removal, that is done. People have their thyroids out. Some of them have them out. Big nodules that are active, they have them out. And then once the thyroid is ablated and voided, then there's a replacement because the person becomes automatically hypothyroid. Just sinks right down. So we have to correct that. If you have the thyroid entirely out, that means the parathyroids are pretty much gone too. So we gotta be careful with calcium balance, everything has to be watched. Okay, now we'll talk a little bit about alternatives. Now, as I said before, measuring your body temperature will give you an idea of where you stand as far as your metabolism. If you're underactive or you're hypothyroid, your body temperature goes down. I know that the number 98.6 is the thing that sticks out in our heads all the time, 98.6. Now, that would be ideal if your body temperature were 98.6 at all times. But in life, things don't happen like that. You know, we have very few ideal circumstances. So most people are gonna be ranging around that number. So it's gonna be 1 or 2 points above or below, or, you know, within the 1 to 2 point deviation. So you could be 98.7, 98, you could be 97.8, 97.5, you know, things like that. So this would be a normal temperature, taken out of your axilla. If you put it in your mouth, you put a thermometer in your mouth, you can get all kinds of temperatures, so it's not a good place. I mean, you can, I mean, you know, the typical scene is the person with the thermometer in the mouth and the ice pack on their head. But under the arm, you can do in the groin, you can do a rectal temperature. Usually the rectal temperatures will give you a very accurate core temperature. Children, generally, you would do a rectal temperature, you know, babies.
What do you think about those thermometers that you run across your forehead? Or we have one that you put up in your temple area, you know, it's a.
Yeah, it's the latest, greatest technology, but, you know, I mean, I don't know how accurate it is at this point. I don't recommend it. I recommend just if you have something that is a little digital thing or whatever that you put under the arm, it's better. But, you know, if you're getting consistently low temperatures, use whatever thermometer you want. I mean, you might want to do the ear thing too if you have.
Could the Synthroid affect it if you're on Synthroid? Would that change the temperature modulation or not? You're already on that.
Well, if you're on Synthroid, you know, you're trying to put yourself in a euthyroid state, in a normal state, so your body temperature should be in the normal range. If it's not, then something may not be right. Now, again, body temperatures, it's a good indicator, but don't follow it like a religion. You know, oh my God, my temperature is 97, I gotta change my medicine, I gotta tell the doctor. This is something, if you do on your own, you can mention it if you're talking to your doc, and it's a conventional MD or DO, they'll perhaps listen, depends. Not everybody will talk about this with you, and they'll say, well, we don't use body temperature. See, it's not in the books, it's not in the Bible of medicine, so it's in the alternative books, and we don't always look at those. So if someone is willing to work with that, with the body temperature, then, you know, then they can start, you know, using whatever is appropriate, whatever treatment plan is going to be appropriate. But again, when you measure your temperature, do it before you get out of bed. You have a thermometer right near the bed.
How many days should you do this and do an average, or?
Well, you can do, I mean, you can do it, you know, if you do it for a week, you see, you know, I would give it a minimum of a week, yes. Because body temperature can fluctuate, you may be having an illness, there could be something in your system. But watch and see, if you don't feel well and your body temperature's up, that's not exactly the time to be registering for hypothyroidism to see if you're hypo. It's more for the hypo situation. Okay, the better source would be a porcine source, and you have things like Armor Thyroid, Nature Thyroid, West Thyroid. Armor has in it, as far as I know, cornstarch. If you're allergic, you might want to choose one of the others. They're not locally easily obtainable. Even the compounders sometimes don't carry these in. You have to sometimes go through hoops to try to get the Nature Thyroid, West Thyroid, which don't have cornstarch. But most of the fillers now are, you know, it's either cornstarch or cellulose. And if you know your compounder and you say, you know, I don't want anything in it, I don't want any filler at all, they can do it for you too. Because some people are very sensitive to fillers. Anyhow, replacement of the thyroid, that has to be discussed with your practitioner. Now, again, the synthetics have a singular element, a synthetic T4 or a synthetic T3. In the desiccated gland, which is the whole gland, we have T1 through T4. So you got 4 different types of things going on. That's why endocrinologists and general practitioners in general don't like to use it, because it's hard to regulate. But the regulation type thing is not much, I don't see it as much of an issue. If I see people responding well to the porcine, I'd rather use it. Some people have no response to synthetics. So we have to decide which would be best. And of course, there's cost. People have an insurance plan, and the thyroid, desiccated thyroid is not on the plan, they don't want to pay. There's all kinds of issues there. But you can, again, you can check with your pharmacy on that. Bioidentical hormones are those which are closest to your physiology, and they are plants. The testosterone, the progesterone, and the estrogen. You can get them through the compounding pharmacies. If you inquire about this with your physician, it is probably in your interest. If you do have an underactive thyroid, you probably need those others too. You need to check on them, and you may need to have them replaced too. For an overall better health and balanced health, I'm not saying that this applies to everybody, it's not applicable to everybody, but it probably is in your best interest to look at all of these hormones and look at them through the saliva. Men with hypothyroid states usually have low testosterone, and if you correct your thyroid, you can improve the testosterone. A lot of people ask me about growth hormone. Growth hormone can be done. You can use it. It is expensive, but there are ways of increasing your growth hormone naturally. And exercise is one. Also, the replacement of DHEA, which is kind of like the mother of all the hormones. DHEA can be replaced. Testosterone and melatonin can all increase your growth hormone too. So you might want to think about those things and look into them. Thyroid support supplements are available for people who have maybe a mild case of hypothyroidism, or may think that they need it, and all the numbers have come up okay, they feel okay, but they feel like a little more support. You can do that. There are different thyroid supports. But be careful. Quality is important. There's a company called Gaia, G-A-I-A. It has a good line of thyroid and adrenal support products, and they are vegetarian, so there's no animal stuff in them. So saliva. Saliva will really be best because it tells you what's happening at the cell level. Blood is extra-cell, is outside of the cell. So blood is not a great indicator of how your hormones are really working, so saliva is a better test. And you can do it at home. Ask your doctor about these things, because they can be contributing to your fatigue and your sluggishness and your mental problems. If you have Lyme's disease, or if you had it, you may have antibodies, and that could be contributing. If you have the Epstein-Barr and hepatitis and gliadin antibodies, those are the gluten antibodies. You may not be doing very well with bread and pasta and cookies and bagels and donuts. You name it, all the breading stuff. More evidence is pointing to celiac-like symptoms with hypothyroidism. There's a connection there. So there is that connection. There's that, which is getting stronger in the literature now. So if you have a hypothyroid problem, if you particularly have a Hashimoto problem, you better get away from gluten, because it's more than likely that you're sensitive to it. You can check your antibodies through the blood. Yeah.
All this stuff about gluten.
Yeah.
I mean, I eat bread.
Yes.
I don't overdo it.
Yeah.
I don't have a problem with bread, but I'm almost thinking now I should look into gluten, because it's like the buzzword now. enrolled to be gluten-free. So how do you know if you feel well after you eat?
Right, if you feel well, and you're not an overindulger, it doesn't necessarily mean that you are sensitive to gluten. It is a very big problem though. I have never seen it bigger than it has been in the past few years. It is overwhelming now, and I think it's because of all the wheat modification.
What are the symptoms? Bread, I can browse.
She'll tell you.
I'll help you. And they don't show up right away.
You can have so many symptoms from the gastrointestinal tract, having a lot of loose stool, bloating, gas. People can have headaches. They feel extremely sluggish. I mean, you feel like you have a hypothyroid condition, but.
So, I mean, if you feel okay, 2 days, you know that, you can go eat your bread.
Yeah, it's unlikely that you're gonna be really sad. If you're feeling well, I mean, you're healthy, you feel good, you have vitality. Nobody's telling you that you have it,
I'm
but.
almost like afraid to eat bread now. It's like, really psychologically, it's like.
I understand. It's what happens with the media. The media, everybody pushes it on you. Just, you just choose your friend wisely. Don't eat garbage, eat quality. You do the best you can, that's it. Yes. Non-chlorinated pools, right.
That's what I'm talking
Yes, non-chlorinated pools. Salted pools, yeah, if you can get a different system to clean your pool, to clean out and filter your pool, get a different system. There's copper ionization. There's a system you can have installed with copper plates, okay? The water goes through the filter, goes through the copper plates, and it controls the algae. Okay, you don't have to have any chlorine.
What happens with chlorine?
Chlorine is
It
a,
goes into the skin.
right, exactly. It's, you inhale it, it gets into your skin, it can displace the iodine, it ruins the thyroid.
Oh, it does? Really bad?
It can. If you have a lot of chlorine in the pool and you're exposed to it regularly, you're really not doing yourself too good. You've got to be careful with chlorine. It is a halogen that can hurt you. Yes.
What was the name of that company, the vegetarian?
Gaia. Gaia. G-A-I-A. G-A-I-A. Okay, try to get rid of junk, processed foods, artificial sweeteners. I can't say enough about this. Artificial sweeteners are the downfall of this civilization. Phenylalanine that is in aspartame is genetically modified. It is dangerous. If you have fetal ketonuria and all that situation, you have no business coming near artificial sweeteners. If you are, having mood disorders, if you have anything wrong with your thyroid, you have no business being around artificial sweeteners. If you want your health, don't take in artificial sweeteners.
How about stevia?
Alcohol, yeah, like xylitol is probably the only one I would use.
About stevia.
How about
Stevia, yes.
Stevia, all right?
Yes, these are coming from leaves and plants and things like that. Yes, they're okay. Just be careful. Some of them may be mixed with other things. So if there's mixtures, be careful. But don't go after these zero waters or whatever this is, 0 calories. Zeros. Be very careful. They have those artificial sweeteners in them.
Yes.
Yeah, and that can affect your thyroid gland. Hormonally treated, anything with hormones, you have the beef, the cattle, livestock, which has all been, manipulated because everybody's got to get injected. Everybody needs more hormones. It is really a problem for so many reasons. So please, if you eat meat, you eat livestock, try to get that which your source, that they're humanely treated, that they're grass-fed or fed with proper food. Because they're going to affect you in every sense of the word. Iodine, again, be careful. If you have Hashimoto's, it's not recommended that you would take any supplemental, but you can take iodine in the natural food form. Supplements can be anywhere from a smallest, which is that which is considered the RDA, the recommended daily allowance, 150 micrograms. It's nothing. It's really nothing. Iodine. If you want to prevent breast disease and things like that, you want to go much higher. If you are, in a position to take it. Like if you have a good iodine diet, you have nice foods and everything and so forth, then continue.
What about
If you
vitamin,
don't take any, you may want to.
what about vitamin D? You don't have that on the list.
Vitamin D, yeah, there's a lot of stuff, sir, I can't cover everything as it is. I'm trying to get you done in about 15 minutes. There's a lot of stuff that you can use. I'm always professing vitamin D. Vitamin D is for everybody. We should be using it. It's not that it's specific for the thyroid, but it's definitely an important thing for all of us to have.
You said vitamin D is good, if you have parathyroid, it's good.
Well, if you have excessive calcium problems and so forth, vitamin D should be taken. But if there's a problem with calcium, we have to regulate, manipulate how much D and calcium, there is in the system and how we can better. Yeah, I don't know what your problem is. What is your problem?
I have the nodule.
You have a nodule on the parathyroid?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, you can.
And, Dr. Singh, the endocrinologist wants me to have them out. Dr. Singh said, no way. There is no way.
As long as you have the minerals accounted for and in range, you're fine.
So my calcium was like 10.0.
That's fine. That's fine. That's fine. Calcium at 10 is fine. Eating organic, please. Selenium is very important. It's very important for the thyroid gland. So a lot of soils have been, selenium void or whatever. So, so selenium in a little supplement form. If it's in your multivitamin or if it's in some kind of a blend that you have, that's fine. But if you can take it separately. B12 is very, very important. I can't stress that enough. Magnesium is very important. Vitamin C with a lot of bioflavonoids, it just enhances its absorption. If you don't have kidney stones, you can take up to 5 grams of it a day. Cleanse if you can. Cleanse. There are certain things on this, I didn't mention on this, but there's a leaky gut thing, and there's the whole thing of, cleaning out your intestinal tract and doing things like that. Yes, any way you can cleanse and detoxify, do it. Use detoxification programs. Dr. Haas, H-A-A-S, has a detox program. It's very nice. He's got books out, and you can follow the program like this. Because you want to cleanse your colon and your gut. It contains a lot of the elements that can set off these antibody problems in a big way, right? So reducing anything that can set things in motion for you if you have a hypothyroid state or you're in an autoimmune hypothyroid state. Clean your system out. Get rid of the garbage. Detox, as we said. Remove all harmful and unnecessary stressors from your life.
That's easy, yeah.
I didn't do stay in bed all day.
How do you do that? You have to look at life as it is. I mean, is your life what it's supposed to be at this time of your life, at this point of your life?
Yeah.
What is it that you have to do to make it better?
Nutrients that we've been talking about help to produce the fibrosis.
Exactly. That help reduce and continue the processes of thyroid production, thyroid receptor sensitivity, so that at the cell level, the receptor doctors will take up the thyroid hormone. It's almost like diabetes. If you change your diet and you reduce your weight and you exercise, you take in the proper stuff, you sensitize your cells to the insulin, and so it's taken in better, and you improve your thyroid, your diabetes. If you want to sensitize your system to thyroid hormone, you want to improve the whole situation from the generation of the hormone to the acceptance and the reception of the hormone, then you need to change your diet considerably. That is, eat quality food. Take away the processed stuff. Take those things out that I've mentioned. Add the little supplements in. Make sure your iodine content is reasonable, whether it's going to be the supplement or the natural stuff. These are the things one has to do. If you don't, you'll just continue on and on with the same process. Speak to your provider, your healthcare provider, if it's a natural doctor or conventional. Do the right thing. It's about you, okay? If you don't feel right, you don't feel you've received the right treatment, you need to move on. We don't get offended if you don't like me, you don't like the way I'm doing things, you gotta move on. That's just the way it is. A lot of people feel, oh, I can't leave my doctor because, I've known him for 25 years. But my health has been the same and it's not gotten any better in 25 years. So I mean, things like this, they happen. They happen. We're all not perfect. Anyhow, this thing here, I wanted to show you, and you can look at it if you want to look at it, or I can pass it around. But you can see, again, can you see back?
Yes.
Right? The gland, how it looks with its wings and all. All right, so it has a little bit of it looks kind of like how should I say, like little lumps around. Yeah, it's a lumpy kind of look. Not severe, it's just a gentle lumpy look. Gentle lump. Little cellulite on the thyroid. But, and in Graves, again, it's, there's an enlargement. Same thing here. Hashimoto's Graves, it's a similar kind of enlargement. In cancer, the gland can develop these, these abnormalities, which are, these things sticking out and so forth. But this here just shows you how many things this affects. And I've mentioned them on the slide. But again, everything from brain activity to your fingernails, infertility, your blood pressure, everything, reproductive for sure. Hoarseness, deepening of the voice, inability to concentrate, skin problems, cold intolerance, elevated cholesterol, elevated triglycerides and things like that. So, and fluid buildup. If you're on a desiccated thyroid, it has in it a diuretic, something that acts as a diuretic, so it can allow for some of the water to come out, because a lot of people feel puffy and like they have extra fluid. So the desiccated thyroid does have its advantages. It has a few little fringe benefits. It does contain other nutrients besides T1, 2, 3, and 4. But these, again, they can be there. You may not have these symptoms. You may have one or two. The less you have, the better. It reflects then a thyroid that's not so altered, and it's got a life in it. So you have to do whatever you can do to protect the life of the gland. I think these will give you enough reading to do. And for those of you who may have overlapping symptoms or syndromes or conditions, like fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, hypothyroidism, diabetes, they're all often lumped together. And by changing your lifestyle, changing the way you do things, you may see big differences. And fine tuning it is something that I usually do, or a practitioner would do, to get the nutrients a little better, or to tune up, turn down, whatever has to be done. It takes time, as I said before, it takes time. It can be a challenge. It's not easy. People living with these things for decades and have had no satisfaction. I hear this over and over again. And again, it's really, for many of us who are providers, we're learning as we go along, we're learning more things. There's a lot more that we have to do for sure, because there are too many people who are, again, not diagnosed properly. It's being passed off as something else. There have been articles on this about missing the boat. Your doctor is missing the boat. So I learned a lot myself in the past decade. It's, just so much, and seeing so many people afflicted, or who have not been, like I said, diagnosed with something correctly. So it's a big problem. And we're in this together, so if you have relatives, friends, you yourself, people you know, you want to share the information with, please do. And I wish you all good luck. Yes?
I have two real fast questions for you. Someone that's on Thyroid, are there any major drug-to-drug interactions to be aware of when they're on that medication?
If somebody's on Thyroid?
Yes, ma'am.
Major drug-drug interactions. Well,
or foods to avoid or drinks, like grape juice or...
Generally, well, first of all, when you take these items, they have to be taken on their own, by themselves.
Right.
If you take a thyroid pill, it really has to be taken as, this is the only thing I'm taking now. Everything will have to wait about an hour or so. Right? So you take it by itself. Yeah, I don't recommend it to be taken with, grapefruit juice. The grapefruit is one that will interfere with the blood pressure medicines, the cholesterol medicines. But generally, the Thyroid, not contraindicated, but it would be better just to take it with water. As far as interacting with other drugs, again, the other drugs are those which are either the stimulant drugs, the beta blocker drugs, anything that would be creating an interference with the process. So if there's something that's going to block the Thyroid itself, you would have to be mindful of. As far as any specific one, that's something. You wouldn't put tapazole together with Thyroid.
Okay.
But again, most of the time, and in most cases, Thyroid is compatible, or there's no major drug interactions.
Okay.
Compatible with anything you take in general.
Basically, you're just telling us, you've done it, you're also showing us, or are there specifics in eating that you need to focus on?
Specifics in eating, there are a couple of things that I could mention here. If you have an underactive thyroid, or if you know yourself to be, and you take a replacement, be careful with the cruciferous vegetables. All right, broccoli, and cabbage, and cauliflower, things of that nature. Now, it's not to say that you can't eat them, right? If you love them, you eat them. You don't eat them in the raw state. They're considered goitrogenic. They will block they will block the function of the thyroid uptake. That can be some serious blockage. So you don't have these raw things on any regular basis when you're, when you're taking like a Synthroid or.
What if you're not taking it, and you just wanna eat a healthy diet for?
Yeah, no, that's fine. That's a healthy food, a cruciferous vegetable. But if you are underactive and you are on something for the thyroid, it would not be in your best interest to eat raw cruciferous vegetables. Just
What if
one
you're
little
not-
caveat.
What if you're underactive, but you're not eating?
Yeah.
You want to eat right, you try to improve things just by your diet.
Yeah, improving the diet, again, you're gonna eat, grains that are gonna be digestible. Trying to, reduce your wheat, okay, the wheat grain, but rice, okay, quinoa, millet, things like that. Your sprouting, you can sprout them, you can sprout your legumes, you can have seeds, nuts, they're all good for you. Fish, most of your vegetables, I mean, if you steam them or saute them, if you eat raw lettuce, that's fine, and most of that is okay, no problem there. Fruits, fruits that are a low glycemic index would be best. Things in the berry family, apples, things like that. Apples don't have as much sugar as you think, no. Apples, especially green apples, are probably one of the lower index foods. Granny Smith is fine.
On my part, the fire that comes with that, is the not take, maybe not take calcium supplements or dairy products within 4 hours after using.
That's a good point, yes. If you do take Synthroid or levothyroxine or even your desiccated thyroid, you try to stay away from dairy products. I would stay away from dairy products to begin with. And in general, because they are either, they cause all kinds of problems, dairy products. But yeah, that can interfere with the absorption and processing of the Synthroid. Dairy products, yeah, for the thyroid replacement, the thyroid hormone.
So if you take blood pressure medicine first thing in the morning, take the supplements before, or you have to wait an hour after, because they tell you in the morning, first thing in the morning.
Right. I would say if you have a thyroid hormone replacement that you're to take it as early as you can, and afterwards you will take your antihypertensive. So if you wake up, for instance, at 4 or 5 in the morning, thank you. If you're up at 4, go to the toilet or whatever, take your medicine then.
Like if you get up at 8 o'clock,
Yeah.
take the Synthroid first, and then you
Yes.
have to wait 4 hours.
No, not 4 hours.
1 hour, and that'll be all right?
Within 1 hour is fine. Yeah.